Our next speaker, in addition to being a data scientist, has been in a band for 10 years and is about to release his 6th full-length EP. Please welcome Soubhik.
Thanks so much, Jared, for the introduction. So like Jared said, let's see if I can advance these. Okay. Yeah, so like Jared said, my name is Soubhik. It's a fun way to pronunciation guide, in case you need to remember. A little bit about me. So I'm a computational social scientist. My day job, I work at the National Opinion Research Center, one of the oldest social research organizations in the country. And I get to work on fun problems at the intersection of data science and public opinion. We work with partner organizations ranging from CNN to the CDC. Outside of my day job, I'm a political scientist by training, and I do a lot of research and writing on politics beyond what I do. And today I'm going to be telling you about one particular project in that portfolio of things I've been thinking about. And just to set the stage for what I'm going to be talking to you about today, American politics. When we think about American politics, we tend to think of the things that are happening in the 4 square mile radius outside of this auditorium, right? Like the big political showdowns in Congress, deal making in the White House. But I want to make the case to you that much more of American politics is happening in your town hall. Okay. And not just in your town hall, but in particular in public meetings that are hosted at your town hall by your local elected officials. Public meetings are perhaps one of the only venues in our political system where you, the constituents of politics, can directly speak to your elected officials and shape policy with your elected officials, right? It's not just empty dialogue, right? For instance, speaking of the CDC, so we know that obviously the CDC was providing a lot of the policy guidance around dealing with the COVID pandemic, but the implementation and the enforcement of that policy was very much happening at the local levels, often resulting in sort of contentious politics, protests, complaints, and backlash from constituents. This is from a public meeting in Boston during COVID times. We know that election administration and kind of claims about election administration were a big part of the kind of policy discourse around the 2020 elections. But election administration, again, happens mostly at the county and local levels, and that's where these claims are mostly being made, and also resulting in one of my favorite public comments of all time. So this gentleman here showed up to his town meeting to oppose the renewal of a contract with the Dominion voting systems, the kind of systems that were in contention. And he like ran way past his time limit. And when he was asked to, when he was told that he was out of time, he said to the local official, "No, you are out of time, young man." So I'm very thankful for this issue for that. And sort of a similar thing with other issues like gun violence and LGBTQ rights, right? We think of these as national political issues, and indeed they are on many dimensions. But with the kinds of with the partisan gridlock that we're experiencing in Congress, local politics is increasingly the venue for a lot of these issues. On gun violence, there are actually a lot of local policy levers, restricting gun vendor permits and licenses. On transgender rights, for example, there are cities and towns that are doing things like banning conversion therapy. So there are a lot of things that can be done at the local level, and you as a resident can show up and actually make these things happen. Okay, so the issue is that you're hearing less about it. And a reason for this is that, you probably know what it is, the local news ecosystems in our country are facing a lot of challenges, from consolidation to understaffing to underfunding. You once were able to reliably hear about what was happening in your town hall. That is less and less true now. And that's really the prime motivation for what I'm going to be talking to you about today, which is this project called LocalView. And what it is, it's a database of public meetings to actually map and literally map and track this policymaking activity at the local level in the US. And so we're able to look at all of these different places, all of these different localities in the US, and we're able to actually literally look at the speech in public meetings across all of these places over time. And we can see things like climate change, religious freedom, business ownership, LGBTQ rights, gun violence, all of these things come up in public meetings, and we're able to track who talks about them, how they talk about them, and we're able to map this over time. You don't just have to take my word for it, because as of this morning, you can actually play with this data yourself. If you go to localview.net, you can not only play with this data, but you can do things like run correlations with key things like population size, household income, and you can download this data as well. And of course, you can track trends over time. Like you'll see here, you can track things like mentions of COVID over time. So I really encourage you to do that. So to kind of go behind the scenes here of how we built this thing. And so we being kind of my collaborator on this project, Tyler Simcoe, he's a political scientist. He's awesome. You should check out his work. And if you want more details about what I'm about to show you, we actually published this database in Nature Scientific Data. You can kind of read more details about what I'm about to show you. But there's kind of 5 steps to this process of how we built this database. So we start with the universe, right? We start with a sampling frame of all municipalities in the US, which we get from the census. And really the whole reason that this is possible is that many municipalities, if not most municipalities, actually live stream their meetings on YouTube. And so YouTube is the main source of these meetings. And we go through all of these places and we create these queries of the place name and all the possible municipal governments that could belong in that place. And we actually went through, we had this horrible Excel spreadsheet that we went through and actually manually mapped places to their YouTube channels. And once we did that, we were able to actually go through and download the videos for all the public meetings from those channels, the transcripts, which YouTube often does automatically, but also like a lot of city clerks will have the unfortunate job of having to transcribe the meetings in real time. And we're also able to get things like metadata, right? Like you know what this is, right? It's like the description of the video. There's also descriptions for the channel. These are all very useful things to know. And they're useful to know to help us identify the place and identify the type of government, which is important, and also identify when the meeting took place. They are not all, the date that the video is uploaded is often not the same as when the meeting took place. Okay, so getting kind of into the weeds there, but the reason why this is important is that you can now take this database and you can merge it with all sorts of things like population density, which you can get from the ACS. Again, you can merge our database with all of these fun things. Population density, for example, census demographic data, election outcomes at the local level, and COVID counts, which are available at the local level. And you can do all sorts of things, all of which you can do on our dashboard now, by the way, things like descriptive analysis of the text, the speech that is being used at these meetings, correlational analyses, and overtime analyses as well. And just to kind of peek into the tech stack that we're using here, this is blasphemous, but we are actually using a little bit of Python, in particular the Google APIs to actually pull from YouTube. Python's actually a little bit better for that than R. And we're using this package called WebVTT, which allows us to pull the transcripts and kind of structure the transcripts and get timestamps for words that are being said in real time. Okay, so these are all kind of friendly characters that we all know and love. So Tidy Census is this fantastic package that actually allows us to get the sampling frame of all places. I want to give a big shout out to PowerJoin, which besides having a really cool hex sticker, was very crucial for us to turn a 1,000-line script into like a 20-line script. of multiple joins happening in sequence as we're trying to find for each video what's the place that it matches to. So I'd highly recommend you check out Power Join if you haven't already. You probably know these other two characters, Arrow and Shiny. So all of our data as of a couple of days ago is stored in Parquet format, and our entire dashboard is built in Shiny, as you may have guessed. Couple of other characters that you may also know and love or not love. DuckDB is actually the way that we're able to not turn this project into like a 5-server, 3 AWS instance sprawling behemoth that no one wants to work on. It's all on one server, and there's no server. There's really nothing. There's no layer between the Parquet files and the dashboard, thanks to DuckDB. Our app is hosted on Shiny Apps. Thank you, Posit. And the underlying data that you can actually access and download right now, if you want, is hosted at the Harvard Dataverse project. It's a repository for academic data, which I'd recommend that you check out as well. Okay, just to show you how easy it is to analyze this data, all you have to do is you have to create an account on the Dataverse, on the Harvard Dataverse. You get your token. You install 2 packages if you don't have them already, and voila, you can just read in a slice of the data, the data in Parquet format in the repository as a data frame for free. Okay, so what can LocalView actually tell us about local politics? Why is this database useful? So we've been doing research with this database for a couple of years now, and I just want to share a couple of things that we kind of consistently find. Some of these are not necessarily path-breaking, but one, issue attention changes over time and context, and this is sort of obvious, right? So if we recall, that GIF was showing mentions of COVID over time, and indeed mentions of COVID, unsurprisingly, have decreased over time. And before I get a Tufts award, there's another version of this plot that has percentage of meetings over time. So you know that I'm not trying to fool you. You can look at percentage of meetings over time. Again, unsurprisingly, attention to COVID as a percentage of all meetings over time is also declined. But something that might surprise you is that attention to COVID itself is actually correlated with household income, which is sort of funny because in a lot of places, the epicenter of COVID in the local level was not, wealthy municipalities in the US. So that's kind of interesting. That's kind of surprising. If we look at abortion, so abortion is kind of an interesting issue. It's an example of kind of bursty attention to, a mostly sort of national or state level a policy topic. This first burst happened after all of the kind of big state bans that abortion, kind of total bans that had happened in the South. And this other peak here is after the Dobbs decision, which you may have guessed. And so you got these like bursts of attention to abortion. And you can see here that these mentions at the place level are actually negatively correlated with household income, median household income in that place. Okay, and to take a third issue, if we look at attention to policing, this is an issue that's only been growing in attention, at least somewhat steadily over time. And there doesn't seem to be that discernible of a correlation with household income. There's a slight positive correlation with kind of how wealthy a municipality is and how much attention is paid to police. I encourage you to query these on your own because you can actually see, specific examples of mentions of these topics in these various places. Okay, so to kind of have a more system level view of what's going on in local politics and to kind of think about the politics part of this. So I'm going to show you one analysis that we did a couple years ago. And basically the takeaway is that Democratic cities and Republican towns govern differently, which you probably already know, but I'm going to show it to you in a kind of nice way using our data. So what I did is, if you're all familiar with topic models, I fit a topic model to our data. Okay, so topic model, did all the topic model stuff, label the topics, validated the topics. I took all of our towns, all of the places, all the governments in our sample, and I looked at the distribution of topics that are discussed in those places, in those public meetings. So what you're going to see here are a bunch of dots that are places. And what you're going to see is a sort of principal component grid of those topics. And the reason to do this principal component analysis is to see which topics are correlated with each other, okay? So a town that's over here on the far right corner and a town that's over on the far left upper corner, they're very different in the topics that they that are brought up in meetings. Okay, and then I'm also going to show you the topics that kind of explain that difference between a town on the far right and the town on the far left. And just to complicate things further, I'm going to actually color each of these places by their Republican vote share, their average Republican vote share over this sort of 10-year period. And so what you see is a couple of things. So first, we can see the topics that happen in like the different topics that really explain the spread in issue attention in local politics. There are places that talk a lot about housing, a lot about kind of neighbors and transit and biking. They're very different from the places that spend a lot more time talking about cars, motor vehicles, that talk about the roads, that talk about, you know, unemployment. Okay, so those are very different kind of sets of places. And you can see here that the most democratic cities in our sample, Philadelphia, you know, Austin, these like big kind of metro hubs, they just talk about different things than like the smaller places do, right? Social services, attention to elections, community, these things kind of show up more in democratic big cities than they do in these smaller places that tend to be more about kind of making sure that the trains are running on time, the streets are cleaned, sort of different style of governance than you see in these big cities that focus a lot more on redistributive policy. Okay, there's a great quote that New York City, the governance style in New York City is closer to Congress than it is to, you know, your suburban hometown. I think this plot does a good job of sort of showing that. Okay, and also if you want to read the paper behind this figure, you can do so at that URL. Okay, so that's basically it. What's next for me is, or rather for you, is one, you're gonna go home and you're gonna start your own project with LocalView tonight. You're gonna read our research that uses this data. You're gonna chat with me and like all my tweets on the platform that's formerly known as Twitter. And also a new project is underway, which is called District View. Some of my collaborators are actually in the audience here, and you're gonna stay tuned for this and keep an eye out for that. So that's all I got. Thanks so much.